So you have financially limited resources but still want to ride a motorcycle? Luckily there's an option for you. Cheap used bikes from eBay and Pages alike. For a good price, of course. Sounds like a great plan, right? Well, it's a bit more complicated than that. And also, there's maybe one thing that would make you consider actually buying a new bike instead, even on a budget. So welcome back to the freemilesmc, and we're going today talk about the truth of used motorcycles. So what exactly makes me qualified to speak about this? I've been personally riding motorcycles for 3 years, and for most of that time, I've been riding bikes for less than $1,000 and also have ridden more than 150,000 kilometers in that time, and have owned 4 different motorcycles for less than $1,000 and 1 used motorcycle for less than $5,000. And also have worked in the motorcycle industry for some time. I'm a bit sick today. I hope that's okay with you guys. That's also the reason why you're not seeing the valve adjustment video on the XJ right now. So let's start with the big elephant in the room, purchasing price. Used motorcycles are a lot more financially manageable when buying them at first. This is due to new motorcycles losing their value quite quickly, and also when it comes to the lower areas of the used market, we are experiencing right now partial market collapse basically. This is especially apparent when looking at motorcycles from the 1990s. This basically means that anyone right now can buy a motorcycle at whatever income they have, which is, in my opinion, actually super cool and quite great. This is due to older riders giving up riding, which then often leaves very well-kept machines that people just want to get rid of as quickly as possible that have been well maintained on the market. This combined with the fact that there are a lot less younger riders than there are older riders, and also most young riders don't desire something like a XJ600 or a GS500 or something like an old FCR. So basically almost no demand meets huge supply and sellers who want to get rid of the bikes. But what do you get for that low purchasing price? Let's talk usability. Due to the low price, you are way more comfortable with doing loads of things that you would never do with a new bike. Like going on a ride out where you are scared of dropping your bike and all the other hooligan stuff, doing also some shenanigans like donuts in a parking lot, taking your bike off-road and off-roading it maybe through deep sand or driving through a little bit of water is all something that if you're basically only sitting on a $500 is a lot easier. On top of that, you can even consider taking the same bike to the track. You have all those things all in one and you're not really scared of dropping the bike. Those bikes are a ton of fun because they're meant to be used in the end. When you see it like that, you can have a lot more fun on a cheap motorcycle like that actually than on a newer bike. And also at some point, a motorcycle will stop losing value as a bike you bought for $500. Like I put my motorcycle for $500 basically through hell, and it's probably still selling for $500. Even though I'm not going to sell it, and that kind of leads to motorcycle hoarding as those bikes basically have no resale value. But on the other side of that coin, in the not so exciting moments when you desire a reliable experience, that's kind of where the downsides are of a used bike like that. As the constant anxiety of potentially breaking down is always a bit with you, and also if you own a bike like that for some time, you probably will also already have experienced the one or other breakdown. And then with the combination of not really having money, that leads to the bad combination of no money, no knowledge, and a cheap bike, which is just a handful. Like you will probably push start your bike every time it doesn't start quite a lot, and it's frustrating when the bike doesn't fire up. You have to be somewhere, you don't have the money to fix this issue, and you're stuck push starting your bike on the sidewalk. As often, a bike that still rides but has issues like that is in desperate need of having something fixed. Let's talk about the whole maintenance and repair side of things. Many used and therefore older motorcycles are a lot simpler and are a lot easier to maintain. And with regular servicing, and if you know a little bit what you're doing, you can basically keep them running forever. But that is easier said than done. Even though they're very simple to work on, there is a reason why this is a trade that you have to learn. Like the learning curve for learning how to repair your own motorcycle is very steep and very humbling. Also, coming back to the reason why you probably are looking into a used motorcycle, if you are buying a used bike, you probably also lack the money for proper tools, a place to work on that motorcycle, and if you then also need to invest in eventual mistakes that you're going to make when working on that bike. That can be quite frustrating, and you need a lot of courage to work through that. So with this combination, it's easy to say, oh, well, for this one issue, I'm going to take the bike to the mechanic and then everything will be going fine again, right? Problem is, often it's a combination of multiple issues and not just one, and the experience of going to a motorcycle garage with a used motorcycle like that can be downright terrible. This already starts with all repairs being already basically a financial write-off, often in cases with bikes that go for 1,500 to 3,000 euros as well. And this is something that you're not told up front. It's not like, oh yeah, this is going to cost this and that. No, they're going to put working hours into that motorcycle, and in the end you're left with a huge bill. And if you then in between decide to stop the work on that motorcycle, you're still left with the bill and a not running motorcycle. There are multiple reasons that cause this situation. The time that has passed in this bike existence makes this bike hard to work on. With coercion, the wear and tear of time, a few screws can get stuck quite easily, and if the mechanic that you're paying for the work has a stuck screw, it will take him a long time to get that screw out of the bike. It can easily take 2 hours, and those 2 hours can easily cost you 2 hours of labor, and the worth of those 2 hours of labor can be 200 to 300 bucks, depending on the garage and where you live. And now imagine how many rusty screws that potentially can get stuck or where they're already half stripped are on this old motorcycle. And sadly, to add insult to injury here, this dynamic is going to attract the bottom of the barrel when it comes to motorcycle mechanics. If a motorcycle mechanic wants the best for you and wants you to be a happy customer, he's probably going to tell you to buy a proper bike and going to send you on your way. Then left with mechanics that are not really interested in your satisfaction, they will milk you for all the money you have basically, because they're only interested in making a buck here. They are already aware that this is probably going to be an unsatisfying result. As basically anyone will only tolerate stuff like this to a certain degree, a motorcycle like that will at some point also hurt their bottom line, so they're going to send out some half-assed repair that is going to roll off the lot but not really going to be sufficient and good enough. And that's still for a huge price. This whole dynamic, how people find themselves in situations like that, maybe will get its own little video at some point. As a contributing factor to half-assed repairs, you also have the fact that carburetors are dying knowledge, and that in trade school here in Germany, it's only a little side note that many mechanics are not really getting taught about anymore. So you will be hard-pressed to find a good mechanic that really knows how to work on the carburetor that the bike has that you own, as also not all carburetors are the same. So when it comes to this, it is important to find someone that knows what they're doing quickly and then get taught by them to be able to do that stuff yourself. That kind of brings me to the next point. Of course, it's easy to say, oh, I just do the work myself and then it works out financially. That's only half true. You're going to spend a lot of time on learning how to do this stuff. And this will pay off over the lifetime of being a motorcyclist who has a huge interest in cheap bikes from eBay. If that's not the case for you, the amount of time you're going to be investing could be better spent doing overtime or spending more time freelancing to actually buy a better bike. But what if you don't want a new bike, and used bikes by now have some attributes that you are actually desiring? For example, 4-cylinder engines are becoming less and less, also now with the Yamaha R1 being discontinued. Often also, if you desire a modern classic bike, there's often an older version that looks very similar, that is a lot cheaper and is basically the real thing, or as close as you're going to get with a legal street bike. Also, another aspect here is power. In general, of course, modern motorcycles also pack quite a punch. But if you look at the price to power ratio, used motorcycles definitely have the upper hand, not just from the fact that they have a lower price due to being used, but also if you compare them to the price that they had at the time. As just consumer demands changed, as you can see with the rise of Royal Enfield and the decline of 600cc sport bikes. This is especially true if you look at sports bikes, as there just has been a huge demand for those bikes like that when people that had the money to buy them and the bag to ride them were in the early 2000s just like with the right pocket and the right age at the right point in time to enjoy these motorcycles. Of course, when looking at used motorcycles, not everything is better than new bikes. For example, old motorcycles have a lot less technology. Many people actually prefer that, but this also goes for parts like suspension and tire technology. And let me tell you, suspension and tire technology between bikes from the late 90s to now, there are light years in between. Like, those bikes feel sketchy to say the least compared to a modern bike. So what is the conclusion here now that I laid out all the information I have from my experience with used motorcycles? I think I can say if you're new to riding motorcycles and are interested in motorcycles in general, it's probably a better bet to go for a new cheap motorcycle or a slightly used motorcycle that is still on warranty and just have fun riding. So now that I have laid out all the things that I have experienced with used motorcycles, what is the conclusion here? I would say that for people who are interested in starting to ride motorcycles or people who are looking into buying a bike, it's probably a better idea to buy a cheap new motorcycle or a slightly used motorcycle that is still on warranty, as you're basically running this stuff for the same price as the bike from eBay, as you're going to save the money on potential repairs. Also, there's just a lot more joy in riding than in wrenching. So does that now mean that you shouldn't buy used cheap motorcycles from eBay? No, it doesn't. Absolutely not. It's just really important that you know what you're getting into and that you basically learn from the experiences that I made. It is important to learn how to work on your own motorcycle yourself quickly and at the beginning of your riding career, and not half-ass that and also not put it back. Because I'm currently learning that because I experienced those things and now have to learn how to work on bikes if I want to continue riding bikes like that. And it's just something that is nice to know before you're getting into this. Because cheap motorcycles from eBay and cheap used bikes in general have a lot of stuff to offer. They feel a lot more characterful. I described earlier the suspension as sketchy. Yes, that's the case, but it's also a really raw feeling, as those bikes with their carburetors, basically no electronics, have a really raw and nice sensation to them often. And it is a lot of fun that can be had here for very little money. And if you are also interested in working on bikes in general and have an interest for stuff like that, and you kind of have a rough idea of what it will be like, as something like working on motorcycles is hugely over-romanticized, you're going to have a good time. So definitely used bikes have their place and they're great fun for very little money. It's just you should know what you're getting into, and now you know. If you want to see how I'm learning how to work on my used bike, then definitely check out the Yamaha XJ Adventure Bike Build series. And also, I hope that I see you guys in the next one. See you soon.